Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. Today's episode is Bleach Soul Society The Rescue Arc, Episode 43, The Despicable Shinigami. Episode in a nutshell is a brief reminder of what happened in the episode. So, the episode begins with Inoue and Ishida hiding inside a building while she has her little fairies heal the one that was damaged in the earlier fight they had on the rooftop. And then we get a little flashback to that fight to remind us, because it has been a few episodes, which fight injured her little fairy thing. Then they decide to leave that, and as they're running, they get called out by a drunk random Shinigami who's passing by, who asks them who they are. They say they're part of Squad 11. He goes, "Oh, that's funny because I don't recognize you. I'm part of Squad 11, and I see you have no Zanpakuto. Who are you really?" And starts to, become aggressive towards them. Then a group of other Shinigami come over and they basically, push him out of the way, saving Inoue, and are all like, "Oh my goodness, you're part of the same squad we are, Squad 12. We gotta help each other out." And then Ishida realizes that they're acting suspiciously nice, so he warns Inoue, and that works out because, as it turns out, they were actually underlings of Mayuri, and he sets them alight in an effort to get rid of Inoue, Ishida, and the random Shinigami who he doesn't care about, as he doesn't even care about his own subordinates. And this, of course, doesn't work because Inoue has her shield. However, when she uses the shield, she gains his attention because he hasn't seen a technique like that before, and he wants to research it, and so he offers her a place as a research subject of his division, offering to limit drug injections to like 8 times a day and surgeries to like 5 times a day and not do any modifications that could potentially make you die. Really good conditions for a research subject. And of course, Ishida takes offense to this and takes out his weapon. And then the Shinigami who almost got caught up and died in the crossfire agrees to take Inoue away on Ishida's request. They run away. Inoue tries to stay. And then him and Mayuri start to fight. And first he destroys Mayuri's arm, which he extends to try to catch Inoue, who he wants as a research subject. Once that's destroyed, he then basically rips his own arm off, injects himself with something that heals him, and they then continue their fight. Mayuri also brings out his Zanpakuto and releases it, which ends up having a paralyzing effect where it basically cuts off the brain signals to move his limbs, though not anything else, which is why he's still able to talk, breathe, etc. And apparently his Zanpakuto does this all on its own. Nemu is revealed to have been a fake creation made by Mayuri and also a fake soul, and he does not treat that very well. In fact, she is the one who holds Ishida in place so that he'll get cut by the sword. Then Mayuri goes on about how, he's studied the Quincy's in the past and he's already researched them, which is why he's not so interested in Ishida. But that, of course, then means that he has to brag about his last research subject, which was an old man, and he basically shows Ishida a picture of his grandfather's head, and this, of course, makes Ishida very angry, and so he then unleashes a technique which allows him to glow with strands of spirit power all around him and allows him to move his limbs despite them being paralyzed. And that is where we stop. So now that we've been reminded about what happened in the episode, we'll now rank the episode. As always, we'll be ranking on our mostly objective ranking list first, followed by the personal ranking list. So starting with our mostly objective rank values, we have +3 for multi-arc supporting character introductions, which was Makizo Aramaki. Then the multi-arc supporting character growth, which is Mayori's extension of his arm, which, according to the internet, because they don't name it in the actual anime, he doesn't name his attacks, which is a bit frustrating when I'm trying to keep track of the attacks. But anyways, according to the internet, Jabarakaina is the arm extension technique. Hojikuzai is the healing injection that he takes. His Zanpakuto is named Ashisogi Jizo, and Shogi Jizo just decides to create paralysis drugs all on its own because that's what swords are meant to do, apparently. And that's all worth 3 points. Then we have a +4 points for our multi-arc main character growth, which is Ishida's attacks. He reveals a movement technique, which again the internet names Hirankyaku. And then he has his holy bow and holy arrows. And then the last technique, again named by the internet because this show doesn't call out their attacks as many others do, according to the internet, is a Ranso Tengai, which the English translation that was on the internet is a heavenly wild puppet suit, hence why it's able to allow his limbs to move despite them being paralyzed. And then we also have, according to the internet, a couple of other characters that do appear sporadically throughout the series, Akon and Hyosu, who are both Squad 12 members, being introduced in this episode, but they are very background, very bit part. So I just combined them into another 3 points, and then there is a -2 points for the negative messaging or behavior, which of course is Mayuri's treatment of Nemu. Because he created her soul, because he created her body, he essentially views her as an object versus a person. Though because she can speak, because she seemingly has some emotion, and because she has a soul even if it is a fake one, I think that this treatment is deplorable. So like even the words that he says to refer to her are just not ones I'm comfortable speaking. So I definitely think it's worth taking the 2 points for it, but that still leaves us with 11, which still does leave us with a 10 out of 10 episode. And that brings our mostly objective ranking so far to, in first place, Flash Goddess Yoruichi Dances, followed by this episode, The Despicable Shinigami. The reason this one is in second is because when episodes share the same score on our mostly objective ranking, they do just rank in episode order. So as for my personal ranking for the episode, Ishida is one of my favorite characters, so I did enjoy the fact that this is his big fight, and it is one of the more memorable fights I feel for the series, one that I enjoyed watching. Now, there were some negatives in this episode that didn't really fit on the mostly objective ranking list because it's a personal thing versus a generalized thing. But I've mentioned before that in anime there is kind of a trope for female characters where they essentially become burden characters, where they just do things that cause a burden to the other characters and cause them to be less effective in their fights or in their missions, in the plot, so on and so forth. And Inoue is a very good example of that. For example, when Ishida is trying to get her away from the fight. She's fighting to stay, and he ends up having to ask his enemy, Shinigami, who confronted them at first, to drag her away. Now, anyway, she already damaged one of her fairies because she half-heartedly sent it to attack. She does have a shield, but that's basically the only power of hers other than the healing that she actually does well. Her fairies aren't at at 100% because as far as it showed on screen, she didn't finish healing the attack fairy. And she, of course, is the target as well, so will be a distraction to the fight. So in every logical sense of the word, she will be completely ineffective in the fight. In fact, if anything, her interference will limit Ishida's ability to fight. She won't be useful. Her, like, the way that she can be most helpful in this case is to leave, yet she can't see that herself. She fights to stay, which, had that happened, would have resulted in a much less interesting fight. And I'm not saying she's weak, because she does have an attack power, a shield power, and a healing power, which is pretty overpowered. And I do like her powers. They are pretty cool. They all have their own personalities, their own designs. They are characters in and of themselves. But again, she's not using them effectively, at least so far. And in this case, rather than, fighting or confronting evil, she was spending most of her time crying before then getting dragged away. And again, her reluctance to be dragged away, her desire to interfere in the fight, knowing that she wouldn't be helpful in that fight, makes her a burden. And again, I don't really like her as a character for some of those reasons. Though, depending on the episode, it can go either way. Whether I like her or I dislike her, but I feel like majority of the time I do dislike the character. And then I also wanted to call out that the visual effects, especially of the Quincy techniques, are really cool. Especially that last one, it basically looks like he's standing in a nest of lightning, and that is awesomely epic. And Ishida, of course, like I said, is one of my favorite characters, so the focus on him, I do not mind. And we actually have a fight happening, which is action-packed, entertaining, and engaging as an audience member, which is why I then decided to give this episode an 8 out of 10, which puts it into first place, The Despicable Shinigami, and then in second on the personal list is Flash Goddess Yoruichi Dances. So now we come to our series rankings so far, and we have our mostly objective ranking, which is the first place, Agent of the Shinigami arc with 84%. Second to Soul Society, the Snake Entry arc at 75.24%. And Soul Society, the Rescue arc so far has 20 out of a possible 220. On the personal side, Agent of the Shinigami arc also got first place with 63%. Soul Society, the Snake Entry arc comes in second at 59.52%. And then Soul Society, the Rescue arc so far has a score of 15 out of a possible 220. But with that, we've now rewatched and ranked Bleach, Soul Society, The Rescue arc, episode 43, The Despicable Shinigami. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.